Greetings everyone. Today we're going to discuss the first question which was asked in the CodeChef latest contest. The name of the question is concatenated palindrome. You can read the question by pausing the screen. I will give you the brief idea about the question, what question is stating and what's the input and output format and what we have to do, right? So it's given that we have the two strings A and B and the length of the two strings are M and N respectively, and we can rearrange these two strings in any manner we want, uh, basically individual string, and after the rearrangement let the resultant string be A dash and B dash respectively, and then we will concatenate these two strings, basically A dash and B dash, and we will get a resultant string. So our goal is to tell whether it is possible to rearrange the A dash and B dash and then concatenate it in such a way that the overall string is a palindromic string. Okay, so in input format it's given the first input will sample test cases t, then n and m, the length of the two strings respectively, uh, respectively, and in second line of each test case it given that the two strings, and yeah, this much it, uh, you can read that from, we can understand from the sample input also, right? So let me give you the brief idea how we can solve this question and what's the intuition behind it. So I would like to I really want you that you should pay attention in two things which I'm gonna say in next 2 to 3 minutes, right? The first thing, that if the length of the two strings, suppose the length of the two string, the length of the first string is, let's say 3, and the length of the second string is 2, so the length of the overall string will be what, the 5. Okay, so if the overall string is of odd length, right, if the length of overall string after concatenation is odd, then we know that each number will be in pair, right? Each number will have a pair except the number which is in middle, right? The middle element won't have any pair because it's the odd number of pairs. So each string will have a pair except the middle one. Middle one won't have any pair, right? And if the length of the string is even, then it means what? That each number will have the pair, right? And no number will be there which is having the odd number of, which won't have any pairs, right? It is the first observation. Second observation, let's say I have a string of two parts, and the length of the first part, let's say it's a 4, and length of the second part, let's say it's 2, right? So to this, and we can concatenate the first part in any manner and concatenate the second part in any manner, right? To make the overall string, the both after concatenation of these two strings, if we want that overall string is a palindromic string, then don't you think the frequency of the numbers, suppose here the A and C is present, then there should be at least one A and one C is present in the string which is having the greater length, right, to form the palindrome, to pair to be possible, right? There could be uh, two A's also here and two C's also, but there should be at least one A and one C will be there to, for the pair to happen and to palindrome to be happen. If you have any doubt, then you can do the dry run of these things and you will get to know. But the key observation was also here that if you have two string and let's say L1 and L2 or the A and B, then the frequency of the character in the smaller part, right, should be less than or equal to the frequency of the characters of the second part in the first string. What I am saying, because if I say if there is a let's say x, y, and z, three strings are there. I don't know what these strings characters are. Then the frequency of the x, y, and z in the first part should be greater than the frequency of x, y, and z present in the second part. It could be greater than or it could be equal to, but it 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 must be at least equal to, right? So in other way we can say that the frequency of the x, y, and z should be the smaller than the frequency of x, y, and z in the larger string, right? So this was two observation only. If you want, then you can let's see the test cases for the, for understanding what's staying. So it's given that we have the, in first test case given the A, B, C, D, D, and AC. So we see that the strings which are in smallest part, okay, have the frequency of the A is 1, the frequency of C is also 1, and the frequency of A in the largest string is also 1, and frequency of C in largest string is also 1, right? So this condition is fulfilled, and we know that it's the sum of overall strings will be odd, right? So we can afford at max one character which is having the odd parity, the or the basically frequency of the one character can be odd, right? So here all the conditions are satisfying, and thus it is yes. And the reason behind this condition is that if we rearrange this string, then these regions must be satisfied to get the answer, to get the string, to make the string palindrome, right? You can see the second and third cases respectively and do the try run. Let me walk through the code, and for the better understanding, right? I have declared a test for the test cases, and I have taken the input. I have run the while loop for all the test cases, right? It's the basic while loop. X and Y will store the count of the first and basically length of the first and second string respectively, and A and B will store the first and second string respectively, right? I have declared 3 map M1, MP, M1 and M2. What these maps will store? MP will store the frequency of the each character in final string, basically the concatenated one. M1 will store the frequency of the characters in the first string, and M2 will be store the frequency of the characters in second string, right? I have done the basic for loop to store the frequency on the basic for loop on the string and store the frequency of each element, okay. And similarly I have run the basic for loop on second string and store its frequency in B and overall frequency in MP, right? What's the odd? Odd will store the number or the count of those characters which are having the odd frequency in overall string, right? And flag to know whether the answer is possible or not, right? If the x is greater than y, basically the length of the length of A is greater than the length of B, right? If it is possible, then the frequency of the characters in B must be smaller than the frequency of same characters in A, and if it is greater, then no solution will exist, right? So that's the only thing I have written, that if the frequency, it's a for auto loop, okay. So if the frequency of the character is greater than the frequency of those character in the first string, right? The frequency of A is 2 in the smaller part, and if the frequency of A in the larger string or the string with the greater length is 1, then this is not possible because the pair will not form, right? So I have marked the flag as -1. Second condition, if y is greater than x or the length of the second string is greater than the length of the first string. So if the length of the second string is greater, then what we have to make sure the frequency of each character in the first string is less than the frequency of same characters in the second string. That's the only thing I have checked here, right? And if my flag is -1, it means what? No solution exists, right? The solution is not possible. And if this condition is satisfied, then I have checked the second condition, that if the length what I have checked the second condition, I have counted those elements which are having the odd frequency, right, in the overall string, in the concatenated one. And if the length of the overall string is even, then the number of character which is having the odd frequency should be 0, right? And if the length of the concatenated string is odd, then at max we can afford the one character which is having the odd frequency, right? Because there will be only one median, and one number could be exist which won't have any pairs, right? So the flag will be 1, right? And if the flag will be 1, then we will print the yes, and if it is 0, then we will print no. So this was all about the solution of the first question. It was more or less the observation based question, and you have to make some test cases, and after that you will get to the solution pretty easily. If you have any doubts or any query, please feel free to ask in the comment section and the chat groups. Thank you and have a nice coding journey.